Hey, what's going on, everybody? So the Miami Hurricanes are off this week, 18th in the country, 4-0 start, and they are going to do some practices leading up to that game, October 7th against Georgia Tech. It's going to start a string of 8 straight conference games. And I really was thinking about some things that I wanted to talk about and my thought process of how things have gone so far with the season, which obviously has gotten off to as good of a start as you could expect. You know, they get that big win against Texas A&M, really get the momentum going. But in addition to that, they've looked good in those other non-conference games. You obviously get the blowout against Bethune-Cookman, but you beat the Miami Redhawks soundly to get that win, and then you go up to Temple and control that game start to finish on both sides of the ball. So Miami's looked good. There's no doubt about it. So are they actually good, or are they just better than that disastrous season they had a year ago at 5-7, which had that 2-2 start? And just certainly a lot of uncertainty and doubt last year at this point when they were 2-2 at the bye week. So I think, to me, it's a little bit of both. I do think Miami's properly ranked 18th. It's hard to really go up a bunch when you're unranked, not just unranked, but coming off the 5-win season. It just takes some time to get it rolling. And I was looking back because, to me, so far this team reminds me a little bit of the 2016 Hurricanes. And if you remember, that was Mark Richt's first year. Brad Kaya was coming off a year, his second year as a starter, that was a little bit down from his first, similar to Tyler Van Dyke. His second year as a starter last year didn't go as well as expected, but he comes back just like Kaya did. And that team started unranked, and then that second week they were ranked, and they started 4-0. And they actually were number 10 in the country at 4-0. They lost to Florida State, which started a 4-game losing streak, but they go on and finish strong. They win their last 5, and they win the bowl game. They go 9-4 that year. To me, right now at least, and we'll see how the season plays out, but to me there's a lot of similarities with that team in terms of when you're hearing about the culture and everything changing. If you've got some veterans returning like that 16 team had, and obviously it's Cristobal's second year, so and that last year does count towards his record and stuff like that, but a little bit similarities right now, again at 4-0. We'll see how the season plays out, but right now I think that's the one that kind of stands out to me. The things that I like about this team that are going well, that I think will continue throughout the year regardless of the competition, the things essentially that will carry over from the non-conference. And to me, it really starts with the offensive line. I think the offensive line, and I thought this coming into the year, that they were going to be much improved, based on player personnel and just kind of seeing where guys slotted. I expected of all of the groups, that one to make the most noticeable change. And there have been improvements in the other areas. That's why they're 4-0. That's why they've looked good so far. But the offensive line, I had high hopes for them, and you can see why. I think they're delivering. I think they're doing good, with run blocking. You're starting to see those, again, the 340 yards in 3 games this year. And I said this last time, but that had only happened 3 times over the last 3 years. So to get 240, I think the running backs obviously deserve credit, but the offensive line is doing a great job there. And pass protection. I was looking at some Pro Football Focus analytics with Tyler Van Dyke, essentially looking at the numbers when he's been kept clean and how many times he's been pressured. And of all the 15 quarterbacks with the qualified amount of throws or dropbacks is what they call it, Van Dyke's been pressured the least amount, and he has the highest passer rating when he's kept clean. Those two go hand in hand, obviously. So, and I think that's going to continue. Certainly other teams are going to present problems, and we know about what Florida State has up front. Other teams are going to have good fronts, better fronts than what they've seen so far, but they did do a good job against Texas A&M. But I just think the offensive line is going to be strong, or at least very good. I think they're going to be above average the rest of the year, and I think when you have that can really help dictate what you can do on offense, not just the passing, as I mentioned, the comfortability of some drop back stuff, but also the running game. I think, and we'll see how the running backs kind of get distributed as the year goes on. I think what they're going to do is continue to go with some hot hand stuff, but also if guys are either not performing either in practice or in games, or if they're dealing with anything off the field, whether it's an injury or just their status with the team, they'll go to another guy. And I think that's something that they're going to show that we've already seen, that they've got other guys. Trevante Citizen is the guy that we don't talk about. They're hoping that he comes back at some point this season. I think, to me, kind of similar to Don Chaney, just getting in there last year with Don Chaney Jr., just getting in there would be a positive for Trevante. I don't see him being a factor. I don't think they need him to be a factor this year, but certainly if he's able to give you quality carries during ACC play, that'd be great. But I just think for him, just getting in there would be good because they do have other backs. Don Chaney Jr. has really picked up his play, which is great to see. And then Henry Parrish. I think Parrish can be at his best when he doesn't have that full workload with a bunch of carries. I think he can kind of just continue to get in there. Hopefully nothing serious. It sounds like with his shoulder, looked like a left shoulder injury last game. But again, I think the offensive line is going to be good. Then I like, obviously, the play of Tyler Van Dyke. Feels comfortable. He said that throughout the year, but throughout fall camp. And then during the year, it's translated. It's great hearing player talk about how they feel and what they expect, but you're seeing those thoughts and feelings actually translate to the field. And we've seen Tyler be good, for good stretches of his career at Miami. So I think that will continue. And then defensively, look, I really like the mixing of blitzes. I like, that they're going to get Akeem Mesidor hopefully back soon. Branson Dean back in the mix. Cam Kitchens is expected back at some point. So I would expect all those guys. We'll see. But I think those guys you could see them all playing in the ACC that first month in October. Again, Miami's schedule, the way it shapes up: 4 in September, 4 in October, 4 games in November. The way it sets up, and so I think that will be a big boost to the defense that's already been producing at a good level. I think Lance Guidry is really understanding what he has there. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to not be afraid to do corner blitzes or other defensive back blitzes. They're going to feel like they can move James Williams around a little bit. I think we'll start to see that more in ACC play as that goes on. And then Cam Kitchens back in the mix. Hopefully just being back out there would be great, but obviously with his play, that above average play that you're expecting can certainly help the defense. Has already shown to be good. Again, Maui Noa has been a great influence on this team in terms of his production and his leadership and just that steadiness, the production there. They're kind of rotating in Wesley Bissain and obviously KJ there as well. So I think the linebacker play, I think the way it stands, unless there's these major injuries on defense, I think they could be a solid group. So there's certainly a lot of positives with this team. That's why they're 4-0. That's why they're winning these games and they're getting out of hand. That's why they're scoring at least 38 points in each game. A lot of things going well with the offense, but defense too. A lot of individuals are also playing well. So there's a lot to like so far. However, there are two areas that are standing out to me that could possibly be either issues moving forward or certainly things they want to clean up right now, and certainly don't want these numbers to continue. Let's start offensively, and it's that red zone offense, particularly scoring touchdowns in the red zone. Miami right now, 66% of their trips are ending in touchdowns. That ranks 8th in the ACC. Shannon Dawson has mentioned this a number of times. They want that number to be closer to 75, which would put, essentially last year, that would have put them in the top 10 in the country. So 75% each game is their mark. They're not close to that. And to me, they've got just have to be a little bit better on both sides. They've got to be able to throw the ball better inside the red zone, but also finish those off with touchdowns in the run game. So again, coming away with touchdowns on only 2/3 of your trips could be an issue, especially if other teams, as it stands right now, again, Miami 8th in the ACC, if other teams are getting there and scoring touchdowns at a more successful rate. And you're looking at some of the trips. Miami's coming off a game where they had 7 trips into the red zone. You're not going to typically have that many trips in the red zone in ACC play every game, but certainly you'd like to think you can. But that's why I think the percentages are so important, because maybe you only get 4 trips, or what if it's only 3? You've got to take advantage of getting touchdowns when you get your opportunities. So to me, if that number stays around 8, right there middle of the pack, or even if it drops a little bit in ACC play, I think that could be a concern, because the point totals won't be as high as they would like, and that could come back to haunt them. And certainly if you drop below 66%, and if you have a game that's even worse than some of the things that they've shown before, which obviously would be on the table if you're playing conference play and a lot of film's going to be out on your team. So certainly I think they're going to have to work on that. I think they do have the potential. With that, I think about a wide receiver and Colby Young, a guy that does catch touchdowns. He's been piling up touchdowns since he's been in the lineup. You saw the high point ball. I think that's a possibility. Good to see Xavier Restrepo get in there a little bit lately. But I think one thing too, I touched on tight end production, and maybe they're going to be able to continue to rack up yards, in the middle of the field, 20 to 20, but maybe not having that tight end threat there, catching passes inside the red zone could be an issue. So maybe a guy that's in there right now, Cam McCormick or Riley Williams, or if they get Elijah Arroyo back, I did see him catching passes the other day before a game. If they get those guys back, maybe they're not going to have those total yardage, those big numbers, but if they can just catch touchdown passes inside the red zone, get that production, I think that could be a goal for them. And so certainly that'll be something to watch for. Now defensively might surprise you a little bit, but the area that I'm looking at is that pass defense. And it's a little bit tricky because the cornerbacks for the most part have done pretty well that have been in there. You got Cam Kitchens in there and James Williams playing better. But you look at the numbers, 8th in the ACC in passing yards allowed per game, and sometimes that can get up there when your team is up by a lot and they need to throw it more. But then looking at that pass efficiency rating, defense, they're 6th. So you'd like those numbers to be a little bit higher to the top. You'd hate for teams to come in, and I'm looking at those numbers as a big deal because of the quarterbacks that they're going to get there in the ACC. Obviously Drake May's coming up. Jordan Travis obviously has been a much improved passer, certainly more than capable of throwing the ball well, and has those receivers. So I'm looking at it from a big picture perspective because those are the games you really want to win, and the pass defense is just going to have to be something that they continue to work on. Just make sure you're really on top of it because, again, these quarterbacks coming in, there's other quarterbacks in the ACC that Miami will face. I touched on Plummer. So they've got some guys that they'll see this year, and I think that they just have to make sure that they're really on point with that, not allow those big plays, and certainly just get the play up. For me, I'd like to see get one of those bigger cornerbacks up to playing either at their potential or just playing better where they can use them if they need it. I'm talking about Devontae Brown getting in there, Damari Brown, Jadis Richards. Those 3 guys are bigger corners, and they're out of the rotation right now. They're going with the other 3. Jaden Davis, the smaller guys. Jaden Davis, Corey Couch, and Daryl Porter right now. So that'll just be something to watch for. Again, a lot of positives. I'm not trying to be negative about this team, but just those are the 2 areas that stood out to me that they just need to improve on a little bit. So in determining whether or not Miami's actually good or if they're just better than last year, I think one of the things that's standing out to me to keep in mind is just kind of relative to the ACC. 3 other teams are ranked right now. All are also 4-0. And then there's 2 teams that are unranked in Syracuse and Louisville that are also off to 4-0 starts. So 6 teams in the ACC essentially are feeling really good about themselves at 4-0. And I think all those teams feel like they can be better than what they've shown. There's things to work on, obviously, early part of the season. But I think if you're thinking of it from a Miami standpoint, like those other teams have to feel good as well. And so that's what we're looking at in terms of determining Miami. I do think Miami's a good team. I said this a while ago in a video. I think they're going to be in contention for essentially one of those 2 spots, essentially that number 2 spot to be in the ACC title game. I still think that to be the case. Florida State clearly has the upper hand, beating Clemson with what they did at the beginning of the year and how they've looked too. Certainly a little bit shaky in some of these games, but right now if you're picking a front runner or favorite, it looks like Florida State off to a good start. A team like Louisville, 4-0, I think a lot of people didn't know exactly what to expect because of those guys that they had transferring in with Plummer at quarterback. They have a running back that's new. Also the receiver with Thrash, he looks like the best receiver, or arguably one of the best receivers, no doubt, in the ACC. And I think they're going to continue to produce and play well. So just have to pay attention to Louisville. Again, Syracuse has to like with where they're at, even with their schedule. Again, other teams are doing well, is my point in the ACC. And again, it's about navigating this season. And obviously it starts with playing well against Georgia Tech. But we can all look ahead, I think, to determine whether Miami's really good, one of these really good teams, really has a shot of winning the ACC even. I think what they do at North Carolina, even though it's only the 2nd ACC game of the year and a lot to be played for, Miami's lost 4 in a row to UNC. It's there. UNC is coming on with their run game a little bit. Drake May is starting to figure it out. I think obviously he's still a really good player, but he's got to get those receivers going. They obviously had that heartbreak with the Walker situation, and they're getting through it. They've got other guys with Jones and obviously with Nate there coming on. So anyways, all those teams are doing well too, and it just has to, Miami has to win those conference games. So we'll see. Starts with Georgia Tech. They have some signs that could maybe be a little bit troubling in terms of Miami, but their run defense hasn't been very good. Miami should be able to do well there. And again, Miami's back at home coming off the bye week, and Miami wants to get these guys healthy and also work on Georgia Tech a little bit. Tyler Van Dyke said they're going to work on some Canes versus Canes stuff, so sometimes when you hear that, that's some good on good, some 1v1, first unit stuff in practice. So they will practice this week, so that'll be something to kind of watch for with this team in the bye week. But again, a lot of teams in the ACC have to feel good about themselves right now. I think without question, the best part, just wrapping this up, the best part about this 4-0 start is they have put themselves in contention to have an exciting and certainly maybe a positive season there the rest of the way in the ACC play. They are in contention. There's no doubt about it. Whether or not they actually stay up there remains to be seen. They'll have to play well each week, and I talked about so much about navigating navigating through the season. That's what they'll have to do now. No more off weeks. They'll have to go week after week, and then they'll have to play in some tough environments starting at North Carolina. So we'll see how this team does. Certainly it's an exciting time, much better than a year ago when it was doom and gloom and we never knew how bad it was going to get, but it definitely got worse after that 2-2 start. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoy the bye week. Hopefully you enjoy this video, but drop in the comments. Maybe there are some areas that are really positive that you like that I didn't mention, or maybe some concerns that you're thinking about, like, well, what about this? Maybe this will pop up. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you have a good rest of the week, and take care.